Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some fish tacos with a pineapple salsa, some avocado crème sauce, a cucumber and tomato salad. We're going to saute up, do like a corn succotash, a lime rice, and all that jazz. And we're going to bake up a sourdough. Lots of working, moving pieces tonight. We're having more of a dessert sourdough with this because we have the request to make another cinnamon swirl loaf, since that seems to disappear really, really fast in our house. I'll be very interested to see how this guy works out because I kind of stopped in the middle of my process of making this one. I made up the dough. I had to run out for soccer games, so I had my husband do the stretch and fold. So if everything fails, it's because his stretch and folds were inadequate, guys. But then I decided I didn't want to shape it up last night, so I popped it in the fridge for a kind of a cold proof, and then I shaped it up this morning and then popped it back in for another round of cold proofing. So we'll see how it works out. But again, if it all fails, it's because the inadequate stretch and pulls, you know? So we'll see. I always got to have a fallback, you know? We're going to put it in my Dutch oven, nice and toasty and hot in there. Well, it looks pretty good to me. We're going to put it in my Dutch oven, nice and toasty and hot in there. Well, it looks pretty good to me. Nice and toasty and hot in there. Well, it looks pretty good to me. We'll be yet to see whether I can slow my proofing time and then reproof a little bit, shape up, and proof again, cold proof again. So we'll see if this works. Maybe this will be our best one ever. We're gonna, my oven was preheated to 500, so that Dutch oven is nice and hot and toasty, and Loki is snoring very, very loud behind me on probably the pillows he kicked off. He's hiding somewhere back there. Oh, he is on the seats, yep. But yes, that's him snoring if you can hear it. But we'll bake it for 20 minutes. And then we'll take the lid off, bring the temperature down to 450 and bake for 20 minutes at 450. Let's get our rice going on here. So I've got 2 cups of rice. We are going to give it a nice rinse. This is just good old jasmine rice. We'll cook it up, and then at the end, we'll toss it with some fresh green onions, lime juice, some fresh parsley, and a little bit of garlic salt, just to have a nice kind of fresh kind of onion rice for it. But it'll be nice on there. So a little bit different than a cilantro lime rice, which I make a lot because I have no cilantro, but it will still be fresh and delicious. Give this a good shake out. And then we'll add this in here. So I have about 3 cups of water in my pan here. We're going to turn on our back burn. That's my front one, my back burner, to a high. I'm going to give this a quick stir. Once it comes to a boil, we'll bring the temperature down, and we will then put our lid on. But we'll get it started. But we're just going to cook it up simple right now. Nothing fancy. Okay, while we're waiting for that, let's get our batter mixed together for our fish. We've got our cod. We're going to do just kind of a nice, light, fluffy batter for it. That this is a little different than my hand breading. We're going to dip them and then we'll fry them up. So we're going to whisk together. I'm going to start with 1 cup of milk, and then we're going to add a cup of water. So I'll grab a little bit of water over here. So this is going to be our kind of our base, our liquid base for this. We're going to add in 2 cups of flour, about 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch, and then we're going to add in some salt, baking powder, and then that's pretty much it. And that's what we'll dip each piece of our cod in. I'm going to cut my cod up into slightly smaller pieces so that they'll fit nicely in our little tacos so they're not so big. So 1, and 2 cups of flour. Actually, we don't need this anymore, so I'll set it over there. Got more flour, guys. It was kind of a crisis earlier. We were running out of everything. Let me grab that and this. 1/4 cup of cornstarch. That cornstarch is going to give you a really light and crispy kind of fry to it on there. So it kind of just lightens it up a little bit. So we've got 1/4 cup in here. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of baking powder. The baking powder, since it's a complete reacting agent, that's also going to give it its nice little puff. So we've got a whole teaspoon going in. And then we're going to do our salt and maybe a little bit of pepper. I'm going to do regular salt for this on there because it just is a little bit nicer. We want about, 2 teaspoons or so. So I'm just going to do 2 good kind of pops of that. Slide this back over here. I'm going to grab a whisk while I'm over here so we can kind of whisk everything together. And we're just going to do a little bit of black pepper. About a teaspoon. So very, very simple on this, but it is a batter, so it's going to be a much lighter, kind of airier, crispier base to it. So we're going to whisk it together until we've got a nice, thick batter.
And what kind of fish are you using?
We're using cod. So a good white flaky fish works well. I love kind of cod for it because it is a nice flaky fish. I tend to like to do cod battered, while tilapia I prefer to do like a breading. Okay. Now we will not dip our fish into the batter until we're ready to drop it into the frying. So this is not something that you dip and then lay out because all the batter will come off. We should be good here. Can let that sit, gives it a chance for that baking powder to react with the base of it. I'm going to bring my cod down here, and I'm going to fillet it into some smaller pieces because, again, we want it to fit inside our little small tacos. So some of them are fine just the way they are, but some of them I want to kind of cut up into smaller strips. There we go. This would be a very, very long piece. So almost going to look like fish sticks too. But that way we can put them in our tacos nicely. We don't have to kind of worry about, them. Let's see. That should be fine. And we'll do this one in thirds because it's thicker too.
I have a question. Can you use seltzer water for the batter?
Yes, you can definitely use seltzer water, or you can even use beer. Both of those react and give you a great one. I only have flavored seltzer water, so it would not work really well with it, which is why I've added in that baking powder that gives a nice reaction to it. But yes, for a lovely crispy batter, seltzer water works wonderful, or beer. My kids don't like the beer one because it gives too much of that flavor in it, so I typically like to stick with just either my mixture of milk and water or the seltzer water. I was almost tempted to have some tonic water, and that has such a very mild flavor, but I was like, it's still got a little bit of sweetness to it, so I didn't want to use it. Okay. We got our fish all kind of coated up here, and we'll be ready to dip them in a little bit. We'll get our, let me check my timer on there. I feel like we still have a good amount. Yep. Let's give my rice a little bit of a stir here. Just going to stir it frequently until we've got a nice high boil on it, and then we'll turn it down, but I don't want any of it to stick. And we will fry off our fish after we do the second kind of coating on our our lid, where we take the lid off of our sourdough. So I'm trying to make sure I time everything to be done at around the same time so the fish doesn't get cold or anything like that. So while we're waiting for that, let's prep up our pineapple salsa. We can start working on our little succotash type thing for our just as another little side to it. So we've got a lot of great stuff that we're going to have in here with our little dinner tonight. Let's start with some peppers here. We can get them all kind of prepped up. Some will go in our salsa and some will go with our little vegetables here. So doing a different type of, a lot of times we just do a good old breaded fish. And I was like, different. And I finally restocked, up on groceries after that. And I was like, we are having no chicken for a while. No chicken. It's crazy, like how, typically, I always go grocery shopping once a week, hopefully just once a week. Sometimes my kids are like, I need this and this. And then we end up at the store again and again. But it's, it was all 1 week and we ate through everything in our house. Like, and I'm not one that runs out of ingredients often, but we used up our last bit of butter today. We were out of flour and it's just, we were down to everything. I mean, I ran out of garlic salt the other day, so I had to get that ordered. It's just crazy. But I will say it was nice. Everything had been canceled for the last, week, and it's very rarely that I get to stay at home and I'm not out running around with kids' sports and going crazy. Now, it will get up crazy soon, but so far, rest till the end of February, we've kind of got a lighter sports schedule. Still lots of practices, but not too crazy on other things. We're going to do I'm going to actually do a dice on everything because for our little succotash, I want like kind of little bits. And so I'm just going to dice up all of my peppers and then some of them will go into our salsas. Some will go into our little succotash that we're going to make. And all that jazz. Now I'm using sweet peppers over bell peppers because I find that they have just a nicer, milder flavor to it. They're not quite as bitter in their flavor, but a bell pepper works well as well.
Did you get restocked today?
I did. I had it was a quick turnaround, but we got our groceries here. They were delivered and I kind of ran out of the house. So my husband put them all away for me and hopefully in the right spot on there. It's always funny where he'll put something and I'm like, I have never put this away there, but I think it's funny that you put it there. But he did pretty good so far. Nothing is in crazy spots. It's not like, there's like, the people who like, some people who put like soy sauce in the refrigerator or soy sauce in the pantry. I'm like the pantry person with the soy sauce, but there are people who put it in the fridge too. And then it's like, you're just like looking for it and you're like, where did it go? And then I find it in the fridge eventually. And I was like, oh, somebody must put it in there. It's like, or maple syrup. I keep mine in the pantry, but some people keep theirs in the fridge.
I even put 2 sticks of butter out.
I know, I did. I saw you put the 2 sticks of butter in the butter dish. Most of the time, the butter doesn't even make it into the butter dish because we go through it too fast. But he did. He put 2 sticks of butter in the butter dish. See, he's learning. We're improving.
I only took 20 years.
Only 20. At least it's out on the counter. Our kids, I should say not just mine, our kids will never understand what a cold butter house is like because it is rough. I will say, never knew how wonderful room temperature butter was. Let's do that. Now I'm going to get my oil in here ready for our fish. For our fish, we're going to need a good amount of olive oil because we're going to be frying them on both sides. Not as much as that you need to have them completely submerged, but when you drop them in, you want to be able to have them at least halfway covered. So I'm going to put about a cup or so in here, which is still a lot less than you would if you had to do a deep fryer, which is kind of why I like to do a pan fry. That should be good. And then our other pan over there, we've got our oil kind of cooking up. I think I put a smidge too much, so I'm going to add a little bit over here. There we go. Grab a paper towel. And we can get our peppers kind of sauteing on here. And then I'm going to save some again for our salsa. So pull some of the pretty color ones out. And the rest will go into our little succotash. We'll get those kind of thing. And then I'm going to mince these up just a little bit nicer for our salsas. So they're a little bit smaller. And I'm kind of I'm just kind of craving light and fresh tonight. And I don't know, we had sushi last night. We picked it up because, you know, my daughter had her like quadruple soccer game night. Let's just say she slept well last night. It was like 2 hours of nonstop running around, and there were very little subs. So she was going full tilt the whole time pretty much. And she was like, everybody else got subs but me. And I was like, well, you did great out there. She scored like 7 goals. So she had she did really great. And, but I said, you can pick whatever you want for dinner. And she picked sushi, which I was very, very, very happy about because I love sushi. And so we had that last night for dinner. And she was very, very excited about that. So it's so funny because she's my picky eater, but she loves sushi. She loves like salmon and hummus and crazy things, but a potato, she won't touch a potato. Okay, we've got our sweet peppers in here. You know what? I think I'll put, well, you know what? We'll just do all of them in there because we'll keep our tomato and cucumber salad just that. So we've got our sweet peppers. I've got some fresh pineapple that I have out there. And we're going to just dice this up a little bit smaller so that we have some nice little pineapple chunks to go in our salsa. And we're going to use our some fresh lime juice in there. And I don't have cilantro, but cilantro would be amazing. But we're going to do some fresh parsley, some green onions, and garlic, fresh garlic, and then a little bit of garlic salt. Kind of bring all of those kind of sweet and savory flavors together. And that the sweet peppers will give a really lovely crunch to it, as well as that nice kind of salsa-y, pop to it, which I always like to do slightly. I was deciding whether to do pineapple salsa or a cucumber salsa. And I was like, you know what? Pineapple, one out. Because it works really well with fish tacos, I think. Just do a loose kind of coarse chop over it. You know what? I grabbed a small bowl, but I definitely need a bigger one. I'll get that in there. I'll just use this for my avocado crème sauce. Let's get our pineapple in here. And then I'm going to start heating up my oil. It will take a little while for it to get nice and hot. That way when we're ready to dip them, you don't have to wait for that part. I'm going to heat it up on high, but when I go to fry the fish, I'm going to turn it down to about a medium, and we'll cook it over a nice medium temperature. Let me give my hands a quick rinse. A little bit of pineapple juice. Okay. Let's get some green onions in here. And some fresh parsley and of garlic. Fresh garlic works the best because it's not as acidic in flavor as garlic, and it's more mild, so it works a little bit nicer in a fresh salsa. You don't need a whole lot, just about 2 cloves, but it will be wonderful. And then if you don't have green onions, you could also sub in red onions. Work really well for this as well because they're a bit sweeter. You don't want to use a yellow onion You could use a white onion, which has a little bit stronger of a kick to it, which works well in a lot of salsas, but I would stick with either green or red onions. Let's get this. And then we'll also be using some green onions later in our rice once we get to it. Looks like we've got a good boil going on over there, so we can give that a stir, and then we'll turn that temperature down and get our rice simmering on low. Okay. Get our peppers there sauteing. I'm going to get my garlic in here. And I'm just doing my salsa up first. That way those the lime juice and the garlic, and then we'll have a chance to really marinate together. I used to be very much against like fruit salsas because I'm just not a big fresh fruit in my savory food type of girl. But I will say I've come around to them over the years. I don't like pre-bought ones because I find pre-bought ones are very, very sweet and go a little too heavy on like added sugars or stuff in there. But making it myself, I love it. I've got a really great mango salsa that works well, pineapple salsa on there that really is much different than what you get pre-bought or kind of in a restaurant. And maybe it's just because I don't go too heavy on the sweeteners for it, so it sticks more of that savory with a touch of sweetness, which I tend to really like. Okay, we've got our fresh garlic. And then I'm subbing in fresh parsley today over cilantro because I don't have cilantro, but cilantro would be wonderful.
Can you go over what's in the salsa so far?
Yes. So right now I have sweet peppers, pineapple, green onions, fresh garlic. We're going to add in some parsley and then some fresh lime juice and then a little bit of garlic salt, and that should be all we need for that. We're going to go over and take the lid off of our sourdough here in just a second. Okay. Give this a nice little stir. And then our oil should be pretty good that we can start doing a little bit of our drop of our fish in. So we had this cooking for 20 minutes at 500. Now we're going to take it out. We'll take the lid off and we'll bake it at 450 with the lid off to get that nice golden brown crust on it. Looks like it popped pretty well. Must have been my secret super proofing. Has nothing to do with the folds. Let's bring the oven temperature down to 450. You don't want to leave it at 500 because that will give you a really dark top. And then I'll do 20 minutes. Okay. I'll be ready and waiting. I'll grab a spoon here to toss our salsa here in just a second. Feel my residual heat. We're getting close on there. I'm going to get some tongs and toss my peppers that are cooking right now. There we go. We'll let them just char up a little bit more, get a nice little coloring on them. We'll add in some fresh garlic, and then I have some corn. We're almost there. Let's get some fresh lime juice into our pineapple salsa. So I'm going to start with just a half because I think half should be good on it because you're already going to have acidity from the pineapple. The lime juice adds just a tartar balance that kind of counteracts with the sweetness and helps jive that, savory in with it. And then a little bit of garlic salt. Not much, but just enough. We're going to give this a nice little mix and let it kind of marinate together. Really bring those flavors out. And we can top this on our little fish tacos here. Okay. Let's take a quick pause. I feel like we're pretty close on here. I'll grab a little, see, give it a little drop. See if it's going to sizzle right away. Yeah. Yep, it looks pretty good. Okay. Since we're pretty good, let's switch this around for a second. And what we're going to do is once I have the fish dropped in there, I'll turn my kind of temperature down to a nice medium. But once I'll pop all of these in, they'll kind of fall off. But we're going to kind of coat our fish up like this. And then we'll drop it in there. And it should get a nice, that baking powder should give it a nice kind of crispy crust on it.
What kind of fish?
This is cod, which I find is a really great fish to use for like a battered fish. And I find it's just easiest to do it with my fingers instead of trying to do a fork, because then you got to kind of shake it a lot to get it off your fork into the oil.
And can you go over the batter?
Yes, the batter is really, really simple. I'm going to turn this down to about a 4 now. It is just flour, milk, water, baking powder, salt, pepper, and some cornstarch. I'm making sure that each piece has its own little spot on there, because as you can see, it puffs up a good amount. And I think we'll just start with that way so we don't overcrowd it too much with it. As I left one in there, but let me get my hands a quick wash. And give this a nice little rotation here. And then once I start to see a golden crust kind of form around the edges, I'll flip them over. We'll fry them on the other side. So do our little conveyor belt again. Move this guy back up here. And let's work on we can do a little bit of our crème fraiche on here. We'll make a little bit of I'll probably make a little guac on there, because we just love guacamole. But for our crème fraiche, we're going to start with some cream. You want to use like a heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to mince up before I add in my fresh lime juice. I'm going to add in, we're going to make it a nice kind of savory crème fraiche. I'm going to add in some green onions, but let me pause real quick because I want to get my garlic and my succotash here going. And I'm going to mince up some garlic for this as well. I'll pause on our onions real quick. So some of this garlic is going to go into our little crème fraiche that we're going to make. It's a nice like little herby crème fraiche using fresh lime juice. So and that way we can put it over. It'll be a nice kind of bright sauce that we can drizzle over the top of our fish tacos. And then some of this is going to go into our little corn succotash. So we'll get these nice and minced up on here. I'm just going to go over them. You can leave them big, but the bigger the chunks are, the more garlic flavor you'll get on each bite. So I want a nice, good, smaller bite. I pop a good amount over here. Now we're going for a nice little fajita char on our veggies to kind of go with our corn. So we have a nice little toss on there. And then I've got some charred corn here that we're going to add in here. But we want our corn to kind of get a nice, or our garlic to get a little bit of a crisp up before we add in our corn. But we should have that nice kind of almost like a fire roasted, skillet roasted kind of flavor to it. Gives it that nice earthier flavor. There we go. And then we're going to add in our fire roasted corn. And then we'll add in some green onions towards the end and maybe some tomatoes. We'll see. Let's check on here, see if we're ready to flip these guys. Almost. Still want them to get in a little bit more golden.
Did you roast the corn or did you buy like that?
It was already fire roasted frozen corn on there, which has a like it has a nice kind of that flame kind of to it, but you could also use regular corn. But this one I think works well with our dish on there, which is why I wanted to get a good kind of char on my peppers to match that flame roasted flavor. And get these. We're going to let those crisp up, get a little bit more golden before we add them in our next round. Let's work on our sauce here. So we're going to mince this guy up. I want to mince this a little bit finer than the garlic over there, because this is going to go into a sauce. And you don't want to have a super big chunk of garlic, but you want those flavors to really come out. So we've got our fresh garlic in here. For my green onions, I'm going to slice down the middle. That way I'll have smaller bits, and we'll add this. And then we're going to add some fresh parsley and some fresh lime juice and some garlic salt. But we're going to get these in there first, and then we'll add our spices, and then we'll squeeze the lime juice over it. And we're just going to let that lime juice sit on top and kind of let it almost thicken up the cream first. There we go. So we've got this going in to our sauce. Okay, these are looking pretty good. I've seen kind of a nice golden hue on them now. There we go. We'll get our flipped over. Perfect. And lovely. Fry them up on the other side, and then we can get our next round in. Beautiful. And they'll have this nice light and crispy batter on them. Grab a little bit of our parsley here. Now, cilantro also would be wonderful for this, and that would bring everything together. But if you don't like cilantro, you can sub in parsley. It gives you that nice freshness, but not that kind of as strong of a flavor to it. And then I'm going to use the other half of my lime. I'm going to squeeze this over. See if I can really get the rest of that lime juice in there. We're not going to mix it yet. We want that lime juice to sit on top of that cream and really sour it so that it thickens it up. And that way we'll have this lovely sauce base. There we go. Okay. Those limes, let me wash my hands. Let's see how our corn is. Looking good. I'm going to just turn this down nice and low. Beautiful. On there. And we'll let this sit for a side. While we'll do that, let's whip together. We've got to make our cucumber salad. We're going to make some guac. And then we'll get these out here in just a second.
Ron Diaz sent you it.
Well, thank you, Ron Diaz. We appreciate that. I'm going to grab out a baking sheet here because we are going to be taking out our first round. And I want to lay them on paper towels so that they stay nice and crispy. Kind of think about how you do with bacon or fried chicken. You could also put them on a cookie cooling rack. But I feel the paper towels soak up some of that extra oil, which then leaves them extra crispy on the back. So I'm going to put that right out here so we're ready for that when we get there. Let me grab 2 bowls, one for our tomato and cucumber salsa, and one for our guacamole. So, or our cucumber salad, I should say. I've got some baby cucumbers here. I'm going to take off our tops on them. Because they're baby, we don't need to peel them. They'll have a nice kind of tenderness to their skin. But if you're using like a Bonnie cucumber or they're just the regular ones, you might want to give them a quick peel so you have a more tender skin, less chewy. I'm going to do a slightly thicker cut on them. So again, that it's a nice chunkier salad. And we'll check on these fish, see if they're ready for our next round.
And Judy sent you a gift.
Oh, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Okay. When I'm checking, I do like to use a mixture of like my spatula and my tongs. It allows me to lift up under. We are pretty much ready to kind of flip these guys over. I'm just going to check them all. Slide underneath. That looks good. That one looks good. And you want to go low and slow. You don't want to go too fast on them. That's when you cook the outside, but then you don't cook the inside of your fish. Luckily, fish cooks up fairly fast. So you, by the time you get a nice golden color, you're going to get that nice cooked up. Make sure you put it down, the oil side down first. That way it can soak up as much of that extra oil as you want. I like to give it a little bit of a shake up because this batter is very light and fluffy. So sometimes you can get a little bit of that oil inside there. There we go. Yeah. So we've got our first round out. Let's get our second round going in there. I'll take a quick pause. I got this guy was left in there from my last one, so we'll coat him back up again. Get these in there. Now you can always dust your fish too with a little bit of flour first and do it, which allows that breading to stick a little bit more. But I actually like the airiness where the batter is like more like puffy around the fish than completely crispy on it. I like it to stretch out more. But you can do that as well if you want to. Yeah. Coat these guys up in here. And again, just make sure you leave enough room between them. That way, you know, they don't all come together as one giant fish piece.
And what type of fish?
This is cod. So good old white fish works really well for a nice kind of beer batter, or not a beer batter, but a regular battering on it. Here, I think that will be for the next round. Looks like we'll have 3 rounds. Always make more batter than you're going to use because it's easier to dip when you have a lot more batter than when you have a lot less. And so that way you're not trying to scrape the fish against the bottom of the bowl. So I just find that much easier to use a big one. Okay. Let's get these tomatoes. I've been snacking on these already. We rinsed them up earlier today, but I love a good old fresh tomato on there. So we're going to add these into our little salad with our cucumbers on here. And then we'll squirt this with a little bit of fresh lime juice as well. A little bit of garlic salt, just simple, but delicious. And then we'll get to making our guacamole because anytime you have tacos, even if it's fish tacos, you need guacamole. So just about, I'm going to say a half a lime juice for this. We'll add in some green onions, give a nice kind of savory flavor to it, and then a little bit of garlic salt. So a lot of same ingredients across the place, but different main things, which will give everything a nice different flavor profile, but work well together. And I know a lot of times fish tacos are done with like the coleslaw on them. And I always feel like fish and coleslaw just go well together, but I wanted to do it a little bit different today, a little bit lighter. I do love a good coleslaw, but just changing it up, doing more refreshing. There we go. And a little bit of garlic salt. We'll give that a toss. And then I think we'll add a little bit of garlic salt to our crème fraiche as well. So nice, fresh, and simple. So we've got our cucumber salad. We've got our pineapple salsa. Here earlier, we added that lime juice on top of that cream. We're going to add our garlic salt in now to season it up. And then we'll give this a stir. And that lime juice is actually going to turn that cream into a crème fraiche, which is going to give it more like a sour cream consistency. But it will have that really bright notes of that lime juice, which is really lovely. And then, of course, we have that garlic and green onion and parsley in there. Okay, and there's our rest of our things. There's lots of little side things on here, but it all works together and makes it so delicious. Okay.
You have a question. What liquid do you put in your cucumber salad?
I'd use some fresh lime juice for this one. Now, I do cucumber salads a couple different ways, but because we're kind of playing on that really fresh flavoring, I'm sticking with the lime juice. Now, if I want to go more of an Italian base, I would sub out the lime juice for like a balsamic glaze or balsamic vinegar and some basil. But playing it up this way gives it that more fresher flavor that's going to play well with the fish tacos. Okay. Have this ready for our succotash, our little sauteed corn and peppers over there. Let's get our avocados. I got a bag of like baby avocados. So we're going to, hopefully they'll all turn out well, but they're all kind of ripening up at different times. They're so little. They're actually perfect for my little ones when they want avocado toast because one of these is just perfect for them. There. We'll slice these guys up. And then we're just going to mash these up and keep it really simple like an avocado mash with some fresh lime juice and garlic salt. That is all I use in my guacamole. And I think the simplicity of it makes it so, so nice. Okay, let's go and grab our sourdough out of the oven because it is just about ready. There. Bring this over here. Do a little slide. And look at this. See how the rest of it turned out. Smell of cinnamon is wonderful, but look at this gorgeous cinnamon swirl. I'm guessing you can definitely fall asleep during your proofing time and just put it in the fridge and proof it out later before shaping. So, question solved. It could be. I don't think so. Look at that beautiful cinnamon swirl. You can see those wonderful layers. You've got that nice cinnamon toasting on it. Our beautiful scoring here, but I love how much it popped through that expansion score and just the layers of cinnamon. So during the lamination process, you know, I put lots of cinnamon sugar, so which is my mixture of just sugar and cinnamon together, and then extra cinnamon on top of it. So that's really, it's not a lot of extra sugar in it, but it adds just a really great flavor to it. Let's get these guys Get ready to flip them. Just gonna slide this under and almost just like to loosen them up just a little bit longer on those. Well, these two are stuck together, so see if I can cut it apart. Might just be a 2-for-1 deal on those. Okay, a little bit longer. And again, when you flip them, they're gonna be a little bit lighter, but as the breading cools, it actually gets more golden in color. And that's part of it is to deal with the cornstarch. Cornstarch, as it's frying, it fries up very, very pale, but it cools to a slightly darker color. So don't keep cooking and cooking and cooking, thinking, oh, why isn't it my nice golden brown? It will turn golden brown slightly after you thing it. So you're looking for a very pale golden color, and it'll give you that perfect, wonderful golden one. Okay, let's get these out for our guacamole. If your avocados are nice and ripe, the skin should peel right off of the avocado, which means that's how the restaurants give their perfect little like peel and slice up on them. You don't need to scoop them out at all on there. And these are all pretty right, but you can see it just peels off just like this, which makes you get more of your guacamole or your avocado on there. If it's underripe, then it's going to stick to it. And if it's overripe, well, we all know what an overripe avocado is because it's a very, very sad day indeed, especially with how much you have to pay for an avocado. Keep saying I'm going to grow an avocado, make a tree, and I've done it a couple of times where I've gotten like the avocado like to sprout, but then it relies too much on me watering it, and if it can't survive on its own, it's not going to make it here. I'm really good with these little plants here because you don't have to water them very often.
When you get a moment, can you go over how you made the batter?
Yes. So the batter, this is a pretty simple batter. I started off with a cup of milk and a cup of water. Mixed those together. Then I added in 2 cups of flour, 1/4 a cup of cornstarch, about 2 teaspoons of salt, and about a teaspoon of black pepper. Whisk it all together. Let it, and don't forget our baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. That is a reactive agent that you need. It's going to make a big difference. And whisk it all together. And then we just let it sit for a few minutes before we did our little fish. That just gives the baking powder time to react on there. We'll flip these guys up. Beautiful. And let's get this guacamole. I'm going to grab a fork. We'll get this whipped up, and then we'll finish up with everything else. Garlic salt. So a good amount of garlic salt going into our guacamole, but we did have quite a bit of avocados there. I'm going to use a whole lime for this. This gives you that citrus notes that you need. Also prevents the avocados from going brown. And fresh lime juice is what you want to use, and a good amount of it. And you don't want to sub out a lemon because the lemon's too sweet. It's not the right citrus notes. There we go. And I'm going to get that. And then I'm going to go in with my fork, and I'm going to use my fork to mash up my avocados, which is going to give me a smooth but thicker, chunkier base to it. I don't like a whipped guacamole. I don't want it to be too smooth. And I find that using your fork to mash them gives you that perfect texture on there. Because it will break it up so you don't have any massive chunks of avocado, but it's not going to whip it smooth. It's going to give you that texture that you want. And if you ever have leftover guacamole, just take like some saran wrap or press and seal, push it down over the top until it's touching the surface of it, and to where it doesn't have any exposure to air, to oxygen, and that will prevent it from turning brown, and it will stay fresh in your fridge for like a day or two without going. It's when you leave it exposed to air or oxygen, that's when it starts to oxidize, turns brown, just like bananas and apples do when you cut them open. Okay, look at that beautiful, delicious guacamole. Okay, let's get our green onions over here. We'll add these in, kind of toss them up. I've got these nice and low. Add that little bit of freshness at the very end. And let's check on our rice, see how it's doing as well. Looks like we are about ready here. Perfect. So I'm going to turn my rice off because it looks like it's steamed up perfectly. And then we're going to add in, I'm going to chop up some green onions, some parsley, and some fresh lime juice. We'll mix that in there with some garlic salt to give our rice a nice flavor to it, a bright, happy flavor. So let's I got my green onion. I'm going to grab my parsley here. So similar to a cilantro lime rice, but again, we're going to sub out the cilantro for parsley, which will give you that fresh herby, but won't have that quite that zip, that tang that cilantro has. And I will say, you really can't sub in coriander, which is the dry version of cilantro. It just does not have the same flavor. So you either go fresh cilantro, but if you don't have fresh, you can sub in for like parsley. Gives you a little bit of that fresh herb flavor, but not quite that tang. And then we'll check on these fish, see if they're ready to pop out. And then we'll dip our last ones and get those in. And then I'll grate up some cheese, but we'll be ready to kind of serve up. Won't keep you necessarily for the whole final round of the last bit of fish to fry. And then I'll toast up some of my tortillas. Now, I am doing flour tortillas because we prefer flour tortillas over corn, but you can definitely use corn. Let's get this nice handful here. And I've got my fresh lime juice. So we're going to add all of our fresh herbs in here. Give this a nice little toss in there. I'm going to squeeze over our fresh lime juice. And then we're going to add in some garlic salt. Here we go. And you don't need to go too crazy strong on the lime juice, just enough to add a little bit of brightness. But I do find don't go too heavy because then it's too tangy. And then we need a good amount of garlic salt to season up all of the rice. So I'm going to put in about a teaspoon. Also knowing garlic salt is not quite as salty as regular salt is per teaspoon weight because you've got that garlic base in there as well. There we go. Looking good, looking beautiful. Let's slide these guys out. Let me slide underneath them. Loosen them up first. Beautiful. Makes that way it'll be easy to slide out in just a second. Okay. Again, give them a good shake out because sometimes oil likes to hide in there. And then you want to put them that oil side down so that it will soak up that extra little bit of oil. Leaves it nice and crispy, but delicious. Good little shake here. And again, this works really well for, nice white flaky fish like a cod. Versus, for tilapia, I tend to like to do a breaded on it, but for cod, because it is so flaky, this works well for it. Okay, let's dip these last ones. We'll get them going, and then we'll be about ready to prep up a plate here after we toast up our little tortillas. Okay. Get this dipped up. And again, try not to lay them too close to each other so that they don't join together. The batter does puff up some. And that is because of that baking powder in there. It kind of reacts with, it's a full, reacting agent. So it gives you that light, crispy batter on it. Here we go. Looks like I had a couple more hiding under there. This is going to be a snug pan on here. But we're just going to finish it off. There. And there. And again, I do have a lot of extra batter, but it just makes it a little bit easier to have extra batter and just to throw it away than to really work with a minimal amount.
Would this batter be good for fried chicken?
It's a little bit different for it. This is definitely a lighter, fluffier one that works better with a fish because it doesn't need to fry quite as long. For a chicken, you'd have to cook it a lot longer, which then you kind of risk burning it through. I typically do my hand breading for my fried chicken, which I really like. I don't say there was anything against it. I just don't think it's as flavorful. With fried chicken, it's kind of a standalone. Yeah, you make dips with it, but this is going to be topped with salsas and everything that's going to add a lot more flavor to it, where you could add a bit more seasoning into here if you wanted to, but it's just not quite as nice. Okay. I'm going to slide this guy. I'm just going to share this. Turn that off. We're going to heat up our tortillas real quick. And then I think I've got everything based to kind of create a nice start here. So I'm going to turn on my griddle pan. We'll throw on some tortillas. I am using flour tortillas because that is what we prefer. But corn tortillas are typically the most common ones served with a fish taco. But do what you like, You don't always have to follow the rules. That's what I always say. Make things the way you like them, not necessarily how they're supposed to be eaten. There we go. And these aren't these the cutest little ones. Okay, we'll get those toasting up on here. And let's get a little bit of our cheese grated up. For those who like to have a little bit of cheese on there. This is just a good old, a light Mexican cheese on there, but you can also do without any cheese. A lot of people don't do it with cheese, but I will say we love a good cheese. I'll slide this right here, and then we'll get ready to serve up. Let me just grab my little grater, and then I'll grab my plate on here. And by the time this is grated up, we should have those tortillas warmed up enough. Now, you don't want to make your tortillas crispy. You're just warming them up so that they're more malleable for folding, especially with corn tortillas, because if you really don't crisp up or warm them up, they do break apart fairly easy. That should be good for right now. Okay, look at this dip and salad central over here. Looking good. Okay. Let's grab our plate out. I'm going to slide this over. That way I can bring this guy.
How many people are eating tonight?
So we're just feeding up our immediate, family, so 7. But if there are leftovers, they will, of course, go to my parents. And I think we'll probably have a good amount, but we'll see. I never know. Sometimes I'll make something and I'm like, oh, we have plenty for my parents. And then sometimes the kids just absolutely love it. And then there is none left. And I'm like, whoops. But I did send home our soup that we made for lunch, the rest of the soup for them, because my mom, she loves soup. She's like me, just loves that soup. Okay. These are nice and warm. So get that off. We'll make 2. I think 2 will be good for this, but we'll kind of pop them on here and then we can start building up our little things. So we're going to start out with our 2 nice warm tortillas on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of our special like crème fraiche that is made with cream, lime juice, green onions, garlic, and parsley to the bottom of each one. So it has that nice tangy flavor to it. And then we're going to take our crispy breaded fish here. Look at our battered fish that we fried off. We're going to place a piece of fish on each one of our tacos on here. Beautiful. And then we're going to add our pineapple salsa, which we made with pineapple, sweet peppers, green onions, parsley, and fresh garlic, and a little bit of garlic salt, and of course some lime juice, which adds that nice little pop of fresh little zing to it. And then since we love a good little bit of cheese on there, we're going to add in some of our queso blanco on top of there. And then, since I love a little bit of guacamole, we'll add our nice little guacamole for one. I keep one without, one with it because I like that nice little bit. And then on our sides, we've got our lime and green onion rice with some garlic salt in there. And on top of that, we're going to put some of our fire roasted corn. And then we have our cucumber and tomato salad, which we made with fresh lime juice, which adds this really nice fresh pop of flavor. And then, of course, for dessert tonight, we have our cinnamon swirl sourdough, which is amazing. So a really light and fresh, but amazing dinner that we'll be enjoying. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So we've got our battered cod with our pineapple salsa, kind of our fresh little dinner tonight. You can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my hex-clad pans, my all-clad pans, my knives, my cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us